Given the stature and given the performance overall, it was not the cleanest, not the prettiest, but they got the job done. If you just get into the game and tactically try analyze what really went wrong for England. Now, England in possession were very comfortable in playing with a back three. Kyle Walker, John Stones, Mark Gahey, who had an exceptional game, they would start building up from the back and they would try finding Rice and Trent in these spaces right here. Now, Serbia's midfield was quite cohesive. They were really astute and they knew they wanted to read the game. They wanted to be a bit pragmatic in the first 20-30 minutes, and that's where England enjoyed most of the possession. So, Declan Rice would start finding Trent on this side of the pitch, and for Trent to try and experiment with his passes, with his long range abilities, he was quite limited to that, given that they had a mid to low block and Harry Kane, neither Phil Foden and neither Saka were able to time their runs properly for Trent to release them. Even though Trent was trying to stay patient on the ball and he was taking too much time in distributing the ball, which did slow down England in possession. Now, people are asking critics and pundits not to compare Trent's club heritage, his newfound position in the midfield to what he can do for his nation, which is not true in my opinion because you need to be replicating a similar form in that midfield. I know he had no big lapses in this fixture. He was quite decent in possession. In fact, he was involved in creating three important chances, right? And he released Saka on two occasions, and Saka crossed the ball and found Jude Bellingham. That was the first goal that was scored. However, Trent never really looked comfortable next to Declan Rice in this position, and the moment they would fall down to counter press, they would start losing the ball, and Trent would look really uncomfortable in those sequences, trying to track back. And maybe if Southgate would have gone with an option of playing Trent at the right and play a Conor Gallagher in the midfield next to Declan Rice, that might have worked out well for them because they were lacking that ruggedness, that physicality from Trent playing in that number 8 position in the double pivot. Middle channels, in fact, were left redundant, and pretty soon Serbia found out that England are limited to their usual style of play. So they started pressing onto them. Gudelail and Lukic plays for Fulham. I think they were quite astute and quite good in getting on Declan Rice and Trent. Although this battle wasn't very vicious, England would try finding Saka or Phil Foden in the wide channels. And the moment Saka would get the ball, it was a 50-50 dual success for Saka when he faced Pavlic or Kostic. I think Kostic was quite good in tracking back, but then Saka on the ball exhibited his abilities of taking on defenders, and he found that level of success on a couple of occasions. The only goal which came from Saka's assist, again, that was one of the sequences where he shone out loud. But on other occasions, Saka would not take the defender on. He would rather try finding Phil Foden or Jude Bellingham in these spaces. But Harry Kane was occupied by Milinkovic, and the Palace defender did a tremendous job of ensuring that Harry Kane was silent throughout the game. So it was becoming difficult for England to break through this Serbian defense. And there was a time when I was wondering when would Southgate really go in with those substitutions, because Phil Foden was clearly not working from the left, and we've known this. He has struggled to play for England from the left, and we've seen it in the friendlies as well. And you've had options like Raheem Sterling, who've struggled as well in the last edition of the Euros when England reached to the finals. I think England had a haphazard campaign overall. Their performances in attack were never convincing. Defensively, they were really good with Harry Maguire and John Stones at the back. But if you are expecting to be winning games in a similar fashion by not dominating them and not controlling the tempo, this is not going to help you in the long run, because teams like Germany, Spain, France, they are so good, so creative, and you can see that international fixtures does come down to individual brilliance. But how long will England sustain off players like Jude Bellingham, right? Of players like Phil Foden? That's one question that the fans and even Southgate needs to contemplate. What options can be presented to England to not give in to bloated egos and to play star players together, and maybe start in with an Anthony Gordon on the left, or maybe start in Saka is pretty good, but again, I think Saka was quite redundant too in situations where he could have had put in a cross, knowing that Kyle Walker was also limited to not getting ahead, not surging ahead, which is what I try wondering. Kyle Walker loves going ahead. In fact, Trent had released him of that really good sequence where Walker literally he got a corner of that situation and he could have actually scored a goal. But still, I think Southgate does limit his players to not taking risks, to not being that creative, because he wants to hold on to that possession and try creating realistic chances, which was not working in England's favour. Even players like Kieran Trippier, again, he's a right-footed player, and playing him in the left-back position, knowing that we don't have many options available for left-footed fullbacks, that would have supported Phil Foden in a better way with those overlaps. But Trippier, being a right-footed player, couldn't really surge ahead. Zivkovic was really good in ensuring that he's maneuvering around him. So he was limited to just passing the ball to Phil Foden and just trying to find Declan Rice. And this was the pattern throughout England's chances in possession. This is one of the reasons why they were never looking that creative, and England couldn't really create many chances with just a 0.57 xG in totality. Now, after 30 minutes into the game, Serbia found out that England are not able to really release their clutch players, and the runners aren't really timing their runs well. Or maybe Southgate was limiting them to playing another sort of system, which Gudel, Mitrovic, Lukic were occupying these center channels. Mitrovic would often come deep to help his team out in terms of trying to add in numbers in the midfield to progress the game ahead. And you'd see of Vlahovic operating a little ahead. And even though Stones and Gehi did a tremendous and excellent job defensively in ensuring Vlahovic is silent, but the moment it was quite easy for Serbia to pass the ball to Lukic, who controlled most of the tempo in possession. He would try finding Mitrovic, and Mitrovic with his quick releases would find Serge on the flanks, and Serge would operate in these channels and in the central channels right here in these spaces. And Serge Milinkovic-Savic was quite good with his passing, would find Vlahovic, Mitrovic, Lukic in these channels right here. And initially, before Kostic got injured, it was quite easy for Serbia to pass the ball to Kostic, even though they had limited success with possession in the first half. But Kostic would be delivering those key passes, key crosses inside, and on a couple of occasions, Stones did get the better of Vlahovic. But the moment Vlahovic would find the ball, he wouldn't be able to control the ball, and that is one of the limitations which Serbia faced in possession. Mark Gehi was excellent in dispensing of any sort of threat coming in from Zivkovic and Lukic. When they would be stepping forward, you would see Zivkovic would get the better of Trippier on many occasions, although it was a very hot and cold pairing right there. Zivkovic would win that battle, and he would cross the ball from this side, trying to find Vlahovic or Mitrovic in these spaces. But again, Serbia, as much as those crosses was causing some sort of a disturbance in the defense, I think Pickford, Stones and Mark Gehi were excellent in ensuring all sort of threat was nullified. So when you had a Kostic who got injured, Ladnovic was brought in, the number 25. Again, he's a player who's not very offensive, but I was quite impressed with the way he was actually going ahead and surging ahead. In fact, Pavlovic got a little more aggressive as soon as Kostic went out, and in the second half, they were controlling the tempo from the left, making life difficult for Kyle Walker and even Bukayo Saka. And this is where we got to see Trent's limitation. Positionally, he was not able to read the game, and they were quickly passing the ball around, knocking it around to find the strikers ahead in the right positions. And there were a couple of chances for Serbia, but they were not off target. They were completely off target. And you had a Mitrovic who was brought off. You had a Tadic brought on. You had Jovic who came on. And there was a very good chance for Jovic when Tadic had actually passed in the ball right here. He couldn't control the ball, and it went on to Pickford, who collected the ball. So Serbia overall in possession, to be honest, look more creative, given that they don't have elite players, but that cultural identification and that feeling of togetherness That unification was clearly present on the pitch, something which England were missing. Again, it wasn't that Serbia were the best in possession, they weren't, but they were decent and they were giving an equal competition in terms of physically pressing England down. And moments where they would actually lose the ball, Rice would try finding Harry Kane ahead, or it would be Jude making those runs ahead. But in the second half, you could see that the entire team was getting leggy because they defended well for 35 minutes in succession. And from there on, England in the 72nd, 74th minute started applying pressure again um, on the Serbian back line. And till the 90th minute, I think Serbia were trying to really get into the game, but they failed to make a crucial impact. They failed to get into it. Overall, I feel Serbia could have actually gotten a goal from this game, and even England could have been 2-0 up, prodded to that Bowen cross and Harry Kane's attempt. But I still felt that Serbia were more comfortable going into the game. They grew maturely into the game, and England lacked that reading and intensity. Positionally, players like Trent, Phil Foden, they were playing out of position, which is a major problem when you're trying to push your team out there to the best of their capabilities in international competitions like the Euros. So I think in the next game, at least, if you want to play a Phil Foden, maybe play him on the right or in that number 10 position, maybe put a Jude Bellingham next to Rice. I think that is what Southgate will go in with most likely in the next game. Maybe push in an Anthony Gordon on the left and push in a Phil Foden into the central channels, right? Harry Kane again should be starting the next game for me. I think he wasn't serviced well enough. I think that's just one deficiency I felt that they were redundant to, but he could have actually shown out loud if he had the feet, if he had the ball at his feet. He could have controlled the ball. He would have put one in behind. I'm not judging his caliber. I still feel players like Oli Watkins and Ivan Toney, they lack international experience, and Harry Kane is one of the most capped players in England's history, and he's still at his peak. So Kane should definitely start in the next game. If the problem of finding the number 9 and servicing the number 9 needs to be resolved in this very moment. Even if you start in Ivan Toney, even if you start in Oli Watkins, Watkins might be more mobile than Harry Kane might be, but then he wouldn't really be able to solve that problem for Southgate in terms of finding that right moment to make that run, because Phil Foden clearly couldn't even attempt a good key pass inside the box, right? And even Saka was limited to finding Harry Kane because of the way, because of the commotion which was created inside the box, maybe against a Spanish defense that were very fluidic. And at the same time, they were not at the back in heavy numbers. I think England would have had a better success against a team like Spain.